Hello and welcome to this episode of This Is Your Life. My name is Michael Hyatt, and this is the podcast dedicated to intentional leadership. My goal is to help you live with more passion, work with greater focus, and lead with extraordinary influence. Well, welcome to part 2 of a special podcast series that I'm doing with my wife, Gail, entitled Help, I'm Married to an Entrepreneur. Now, you may be the entrepreneur or the high achiever or the corporate executive or the leader, whatever you want to call it. You may be married to that person. Both of you may be that person. And God help the couple where both of you are entrepreneurs. But last week we talked about the role of the non-entrepreneurial or non-high achieving spouse who's married to an entrepreneur. And specifically, we looked at 5 gifts they can give to their high achieving spouse. And in this episode, we're going to turn the tables and talk directly to the entrepreneur. Now, similar to last week, we want to share 5 gifts you can give to your spouse to keep from blowing up your marriage in pursuit of your dreams. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Platform University, an online membership site for helping you launch your personal platform or taking it to the next level. And you can find out more at platformuniversity.com. So, Gail, welcome to this second episode.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. It was fun last time.
It was fun last time, and we got a lot of comments. I mean, we were on the road this week. I spoke in North Carolina at the Christian Coach Institute on Saturday morning. A bunch of those people listened to the episode. What were some of the comments you got?
Well, I wasn't prepared for that question. Let me think about it.
Well, I think some people said to you, because you reported it back to me, that, thanks for keeping it real. Thanks for just sharing out of your marriage. It was an inspiration, that you guys aren't perfect and you've made it for 35 years.
Yeah. I think people, sometimes you and I take things for granted that we do in our marriage. And so we're reluctant to share it because we think, oh, everybody kind of knows that. But one thing I found out from talking to some of these people is that some of the information was absolutely brand new, revolutionary. That's like, I never thought about the whole idea of perspective, for example, and what that could look like in a marriage and different things like that. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so it was really encouraging to us. And I think I want to reemphasize before we get into the episode too far today that we are not experts. We're not therapists. We're not licensed. We have nothing but 35 years of experience making a lot of mistakes. I think, doing some things right. But we've got a marriage today that, where we love one another. We're still working on a few things, but overall, I think both of us would rate our happiness.
And we're students of good marriage. I mean, we've really studied and tried to expose ourselves to people who have had successful marriages and so forth. So we've tried to be good learners.
Yep, exactly right. Well, a couple of our assumptions, just to repeat from last week, was that marriage does attract opposites. We're a great example of this because Gail and I are exact opposites on almost any kind of personality test that you want to take. But we've learned to appreciate that.
And when you say opposite or most everything, I mean, it's every single thing.
Yeah, everything.
We have a lot in common. It's not that we don't have things in common, but in terms of our personalities and how we interact with the world, we're exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, just little things, but I mean, like, you're an extrovert, I'm an introvert. And initially, those were the very things that attracted us to one another, because opposites do attract. They were eventually the things that drove us crazy and made us want to kill each other. But now I think at this phase in our marriage, at this season in our lives, we really see that as an asset.
Yeah.
The fact that you're an extrovert is hugely helpful to me and inspiring to me and serves as a model for me when I want to choose that kind of extroverted behavior, because introversion doesn't always serve the outcome I'm trying to create.
Yep, and vice versa. Mm-hmm.
Another assumption is that marriage takes work. It's not like you often see in the movies where you fall in love and you live happily ever after. But it takes work, doesn't it?
Every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that if you let them would drive you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Things that you have to overlook, other things you have to speak to.
Mm-hmm. But it starts with the commitment that you are going to do the work, that you are committed to a particular outcome. And so you're going to do whatever it takes to get through whatever you're going through, whatever's really hard. that you're committed to learning how to work in that situation.
Well, I think one of the things we're assuming that people are listening to this episode are committed to doing that. They're in some capacity, they want a better marriage. They know they could have a better marriage, and they're willing to do the work. And
nobody goes into marriage thinking, I hope this doesn't work out.
Right.
I mean, when you're standing there at the altar and you're saying your vows till death do us part, you really mean that, I think. 99% of the people who stand there mean that. But it doesn't take very long before you begin to question all of it, and is it really worth it? And I didn't realize that this was going to be the way it is, and is this as good as it gets, and all that kind of thing. And you just have to decide at the very, very beginning that you really do want not just a marriage that's going to last for your life, but also is going to be a fulfilling, enjoyable, great marriage.
Yeah. And marriage is also a long-term project.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something you're going to go to a marriage seminar or listen to this little series and, tweak up your marriage and never have to deal with it again.
Because we're always changing. Each of the people in the marriage are constantly changing.
Yeah, the person I'm married to today, same is probably true for you, is way different than the person I married 35 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. And thankfully, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in this episode, we want to, as I said, turn the tables and talk about the entrepreneur. And if that name doesn't resonate with you, think of it as the leader or the high achiever. It could be a corporate executive. It could be anyone who is that more driven person, and recognizing that that's definitely not always the man. Sometimes both parties in the marriage are driven in that way.
I know plenty of marriage where the wife is really
Yes.
the more driven one, the more risk-taking one than the husband.
Yeah, we experienced that this weekend, and we've seen that in a lot of different relationships that we have. So all we can do is speak out of our context. But our basic premise for this episode is that you can be happily married to a non-entrepreneur, if you're the entrepreneur, by offering 5 gifts. So last week, our keyword was gifts. Our keyword for this week is going to be gifts too. So let's just take these one at a time. The gift of honor. That's number 1. And I think honoring your spouse as an entrepreneur, honoring that person who is in that supporting role is really important, because there's a temptation to think it's all about you, that maybe you're the more gifted one, or you're the more hardworking one, or you're the more talented one. Nothing could be further from the truth. These are just 2 roles that are equal and necessary, but one's not better than the other. So it really does have to start with honoring the other person.
I agree. I mean, I want to hear what does honor look like as you're thinking about this. I have my ideas, but I'd like to.
Yeah, I think, to honor anything, you have to put a high priority on it. You have to set it as a priority. And I think as an entrepreneur or as a leader, you've got to communicate, not just to your wife, but to your family, that they have an important priority, that it's more important, your relationship with them is more important than your work.
Mm-hmm. And that's hard sometimes, especially when you're in that startup phase.
Yes, because it's so demanding.
Yeah.
Yep. But one of the things that helped me, I think, was way back in 2001 when I put together my first life plan, and I crafted a vision for my marriage. Mm-hmm. And, it's easy for I think the entrepreneurial person to have a vision for work or what it is they're trying to create or their career or what have you. But they've got to have an equally compelling vision for the things that matter most, like their marriage. And so I just thought I would read you this paragraph. This is in my current life plan to this day, but it's really for my vision for what I want my marriage to be about. But here's what I wrote. My love for Gail grows daily. She is my best friend, my intimate ally, my partner, and my lover. There is no one I would rather spend time with than her. We share with one another our deepest dreams, our secret fears, and our most profound experiences. We're always learning new things together. Though not perfect, our marriage is a model and an encouragement to others. Now, is that something we've attained? No, but it's something we're always reaching for, something for me that I'm always aspiring to, because I find that personally compelling. I want that kind of relationship. I know it's not going to just happen, and so I have to build it. And that's really where the rubber meets the road about scheduling. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I remember somebody said one time, if it doesn't get on the calendar, it doesn't get done.
Right.
And I like that. It gives me a lot of security to know that it's on the calendar. Our friends, Joanne and Dan Miller, they have Friday night date night. And every Friday night they're out on a date. And they actually have one place they typically go. And it's just a cool thing. They're a great model for that for me. For you, you're a little bit more spontaneous, and I would prefer that it was actually on the calendar more. I mean, I like to look ahead and know, okay, I can put up with such and such because I know that Friday night, that's our date night. And we have had times when we've done that, especially when our kids were little. We scheduled that more and got babysitters lined up and things like that. But the point of either way is that it has to be intentional, that you just have to make that a priority, and it pays off.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key ways you honor someone is with your time.
Yep.
You give
That's
them your time. And like you said, I think so much of my life is structured that it's sometimes difficult for me to think about putting another appointment on the calendar. But I don't think this is a problem either. We go out plenty and spend a lot of time.
That's true. Yeah, part of it is that we just do so much together that and spontaneous lunches and things that I don't ever feel neglected. So at least not at this point in our life.
But get it on your calendar. And the other thing too, with regard to honor, is when you're with that person, be with that person. And it's so easy. And you see couples doing this all the time. And we slipped into this from time to time where you're checking your phone your text message.
It's more difficult now with all the technology.
It really is. Yeah, because you're like always connected.
Yeah.
But to put your, turn your phone off, or at least to put it on mute and turn it face down so you can't see the text messages come in is really important.
Or not have it out at all.
Yeah,
not have it at all.
And I can think of times when we've had meals with the girls and maybe I've slipped into looking at a text message, and I mean the girls reprimand me hard.
They do. Yeah,
which is a gift to me, because we know couples where they don't do that. The husband's always interrupting the dinner, or the wife's always interrupting the dinner to take a call, as if it couldn't go to voicemail or whatever. Another way that I think you can honor your spouse is by speaking well of him or her in public. We see couples violate this all the time.
It's sad, yeah.
It is, and it's kind of like they have the courage to say in public what they don't have the courage to say in private.
And then it's usually couched like a joke or something like that, but it's
cutting.
Hurtful.
I mean, you can almost see the air go out of the other spouse. It's like they've punctured something, they've wounded something, the flower collapses, something. Mm-hmm. But you just can't do that. And an added benefit, by the way, of speaking well of your spouse in public, I've said this before, it's really kind of adultery repellent. Because when I'm talking well of you, when I'm out speaking, for example, and you're with me and I'm speaking well of you and people know that we have a great marriage and that you're my partner and my best friend, I just don't get approached, or
they're going to go somewhere else.
They're going to go somewhere else.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people in marriages, let's be honest, who kind of give off the vibe that they're available, that they're unhappy, and that they would be a willing partner if someone would just proposition them. And you don't want to give that. I mean, that undermines your marriage, and ultimately it's going to destroy your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the gift of honor. Let's move on to the second gift, which we've called the gift of awareness.
What do you mean by awareness?
I mean just being alert. Being aware that as the entrepreneur or the leader, it's not all about you.
How have you given me that gift?
Well, I think just being alert to your needs. To be aware of the fact that, yes, I am working hard. Yes, I'm really focused. Yes, I'm really trying to make something happen and bring home the bacon so I can feed the family. But I'm not the only one making the contribution. And I think it's really easy to think, if you're an entrepreneur, that, that somehow you're making a disproportionate contribution, and that contribution is usually measured in money.
Yep. That's really hard when you're the one that's not bringing in income to the family. It's very easy to feel like your contribution isn't as significant.
Valuable. Yeah, but it absolutely is. I mean, I can think back over our marriage and realize that, yes, I was able to provide for us a certain lifestyle and all of that. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, you were the one that held it together, especially on the home front.
Yeah.
And not only with the girls, we have 5 daughters. If if you missed the previous episode, but we have 5 daughters. And you were the one that really kept the household running and kept the relationships intact and alerted me when there were issues that needed my attention.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was hugely valuable. And we had problems with our kids and, all the typical stuff.
As I see my daughters as mothers now, and some of them are in a supportive role with their husband who's the higher achiever or something. I see all that they do, holding their families together and their children, and I think, how did I do it? I mean, I think when you're in the middle of it, you don't realize what a humongous contribution that you're giving, and you're just surviving. You're just going from one day to the next, trying to make sure that the kids don't flunk out of school or kill themselves or
get on drugs
or whatever. And so you just are not thinking globally and how is this impacting the family and my spouse and so forth. You're just surviving. But now looking back on it and now seeing my children in those stages of life, I see how hugely crucial it is. Even something as simple as cleaning the house or doing the laundry. And I wasn't a great housekeeper. In fact, I remember when our kids were little, real tiny, when I just had the first 2, my big goal for the day was just have the first room that you walked into when you got out. You parked the car in the garage, you got out and you walked into the kitchen. I just wanted at least the kitchen to look organized and neat. The rest of the house could, be a disaster, but at least your very first impression would be, oh, I'm home, rather than, the kids are screaming and everybody needed you. And just that teeny tiny little decision, I think, helped you. As you came in, you decompressed. Now, then you were ready to meet some of that chaos that was there.
One of the things that kind of goes under the umbrella of awareness, and as you were talking about what you were trying to do on your side of it, I was just thinking about what a blessing in many ways a commute was for me. Because maybe I'd leave the office and things were chaotic and there was a lot of pressure and decisions that were still unresolved and all of that. And then to get in my car and to begin the journey home, was really a journey of my mind more than a journey of miles. Mm-hmm. And I had to begin thinking to myself, wait a second, no telling what kind of day Gail's had. It's probably been unending. She's probably overwhelmed and fatigued. And, she's had her own issues that she's had to deal with that are no less important than the ones I've had to deal with. And to begin, just like you did, to get that room orderly, you were really thinking of me and you were honoring me and aware of what I would need. I had to also be other-centered and be aware of what you needed and what you guys needed.
You were really good at that because when you came home, you were kind of like all hands on deck. So you were willing to, in other words, you didn't demand that you had to go into your room and lie down for 30 minutes or something. Although, I'm sure there are situations where that might be a legitimate need. Mm-hmm. But when you walked in the door, you were like, all right, here I am. What you need.
Let's do it.
And so you were ready to go. And that meant a huge amount to me because dealing with little toddlers and, we had 5 girls, but we had them within a 10-year span. And so there were days when I didn't know what day it was. So I needed you, but yet I also knew that you had a lot of demands on you too. So that just being aware of my needs was very great for me.
Well, and I think part of that awareness is realizing that other person is making a sacrifice and a commitment and expressing gratitude. We talked about that last week on the gift of gratitude, and we didn't single that one out particularly here, but I do think it falls under awareness. But for me to express to you that, I get it. I understand your day's been hard. I know what you've been up against. And to thank you for that. Thank you for the contribution that you're making. And I would just encourage you who are listening to this, who are entrepreneurs or leaders, man, give verbal expression to that. You can't say it too much, to thank the supporting spouse for what they're doing, what they're making possible so that you can focus and make something happen in the marketplace or in your ministry or whatever your field of endeavor is.
And just little things like helping me with the dishes after supper. That was huge. It doesn't sound like much now, but just to know that okay, I'm in it with you, but you're also in it with me. So you help me too, and that was really big. The opposite of that, I think, is when the higher achiever can use their sacrifice and their hard work as a weapon or as a club and say, you don't know what my day's been like, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to put the kids to bed yourself. I've had a really hard day, or whatever it is, and it can be just this. I don't know what other word to use besides weapon. It just feels like, or a shield or something where you're just standing there and you're saying, don't you dare, ask me to do something because you don't know what I've done for you. I've done everything for you, and that kind of thing.
It really demonstrates a profound level or lack of empathy. To not be able to empathize with what the other person is going through. And I think that one of the things that's made our marriage work is that both of us, I think, have cultivated empathy. It's not something that comes natural.
That's right.
But and really what empathy is, I think, is entering into that other person's world.
Exactly.
Trying to stand in their shoes and not just to see what they see, but to feel what they feel.
Yes.
And I think you did that in a huge way for me. It was a gift that you gave to me because you understood the world that I was in and the pressure that I was under. Mm-hmm. And I think I did that for you as well.
Yeah, you were very good at that. I'm grateful.
So the gift of awareness. And we jotted this down as a note here also, but I think part of what you've got to recognize as an entrepreneur or as a leader is, when does your spouse need help? And being willing to either do it yourself or hire it done. And you had a problem with that because I think you thought...
Well, specifically with housekeeping, for example.
Yeah.
Because I knew I wasn't very good at it. I was the baby of my family. I was the baby of 5, had a mom of 4 older brothers, and my mom doted on me and loved to do things for me. Consequently, I never learned how to do much. So I just wasn't a very good housekeeper. And I remember one day you offered to, hey, what if we hire somebody? And I'm like, no, I need to do this. This is my duty. This is what I'm supposed to do. If I can't even keep up with my house, how can I do other stuff? And you said, well, do you remember what you said?
No.
Well, you said to me, I wish I could remember the exact words, but you said, if we can hire somebody to help you, guess what we're doing? We're helping that person because that person needs income, and we're giving that person a job.
Yep.
And hopefully they love that job and they're good at it, and they're operating in the area of their strengths, and so everybody wins.
And it frees you up to do what only you can do, which is love on those girls and nurture them and encourage them, and which you did.
Do all kinds and have people into our home, things like that.
So you eventually got over it.
So I got over it.
Yeah.
Yep, glad I did.
Okay, let's move on to the third gift, the gift of inclusion. I like this word. I had a different word, but you suggested this one, and I think it's great. And it manifests itself in many ways, but it's something that I think I've done. I haven't done a lot of things well, but I've done this well, I think, and that's including you in my business. And so that starts by just being willing to receive your input. Mm-hmm. And I share everything with you. I mean, I am an open book. I know there are some marriages where the one who's the high achiever, the leader, really can't share the intricacies of the business. Maybe it's too complex and it just wouldn't make sense. Or maybe there's some scary things in it and maybe the other spouse is given to fear. But in our marriage, I've never had that issue. I've been able to share everything.
The marriages that I can think of where one spouse is sort of kept in the dark, I think, and the entrepreneur in that situation might think, well, I don't want to share that with my spouse because they won't understand, they'll be scared, they won't be able to handle it. Even if that has proven to be true in the past, I just don't want to accept that.
I agree.
Because I believe that if that is the case, if they do get fearful or whatever the negative emotion could be, then it's your job as the leader, the entrepreneur in that situation, to help make them feel comfortable and to help them be included. And if they don't want to and they want to do something else, that's a different matter. But if they feel like they can't, then I think that's an area where you could grow together as a couple and explore where those fears come from and what can we do to be more comfortable. Because this whole idea of being included in your life and in your dreams and your vision and your projects and your efforts, that's, to me, one of the biggest gifts of all. That's what brings us together, because anytime you share things, then you're going to get closer and you're going to talk about them and you're going to experience them together.
Creates intimacy.
The more separated you are, the more possibility there is for drifting apart.
Well, and the thing that I've learned to appreciate about you is that you see things I don't see. You know, you have intuition about things that I don't intuit. And I think specifically many years ago, I was about to hire a divisional manager, and we'd gone through the hiring process, we'd gone through the interviewing process. And it was kind of the last thing where I always insisted on having dinner with the person I was going to hire and their spouse along with you, because there's things you pick up in those dinner meetings that you didn't pick up in the interviewing process. And I remember you were all over it. You were kicking me under the table. I was about to offer this guy a job, and you picked up something in their relationship that you didn't like.
Yep.
And I don't even remember what it was. You may remember.
I don't remember now. It was too long ago.
But you were kicking me under the table, and so I didn't make the offer. And we didn't hire that person. And our company was better for it. And I remember going back to the office after that, and a couple of people that had been involved in the interviewing process had said, well, we knew you were, intent on hiring this person, and we didn't really share our full reservation, but there was just something about it. Thank God Gail picked up on it. And then I found out some other things about this person later on from people that he was then working with that I hadn't had access to previously. It was a good decision not to hire that person. But I would have had that if I hadn't been inclusive and brought you in close to the relationship where you could speak into that situation.
Yeah, some of the ways that you've included me that I've loved is that you've included me in dinners, that like the one you just talked about, going out to dinner or interviewing people, things like that. You've also included me in travel when you've gone to speak someplace or go to a conference that's going to be necessary to learn something related to your business, and you're going to go to a conference, then we always try to go together. And any of those types of things have, they're fun. They give us fun things to do. It kind of kills two birds with one stone. We get to spend intimate time together and we learn something together. I don't know. It's just, I love being included in your
Well,
world.
Another benefit to that too is that I think it really adds credibility to me. When I show up at a dinner meeting or I'm trying to, sign a new customer or a new client or whatever, when I have you with me, and people can see the quality of our relationship, I think, people just, it's easier for them to trust because they realize that the people closest to me trust me and have a good relationship with me. And so it's kind of a harbinger, is that the right word, of things to come for them. So I do think that we can be stronger when we're together than we are apart.
Yep. The other thought I just had too is in terms of starting businesses and being an entrepreneur, when the spouse is involved, if something were to happen to that entrepreneur, then you're not left with no idea of where to go and what to do and what's been done before. If something were to happen to you, I don't want to do what you do. I don't want to be a speaker and a blogger and all that necessarily, but at least I know your world. I know what you've been doing. I know the commitments you have, and I can step in and make decisions about what direction I want to go now.
Yeah, because you've been involved all along the way.
Because I know the people that you work with, all the associations you have.
I have to tell one other story. And this really reflects, I think, your interest and your willingness to learn, which has been a huge, or made it much easier to do this inclusive thing. And that is, I remember when Eileen was a coach to me, and she would come into town once a month, spend the whole day with me, coaching me and consulting with me. And she had such a unique way of doing it, and I always had so many insights, and I was taking so many notes. But when I would get home at night, you remember this?
Mm-hmm, I do.
You would make me go through my notes, and we would debrief, because you wanted the benefit of what I had received,
And then I took notes on your notes.
And it's a great way to share on something that,
Yeah.
that had been a huge impact on me.
That's right. I got to say one thing too,
Okay.
though. A gift that you gave me, which was a hard one time, in terms of, okay, I'm talking about my sharing your life into your life, but there was a point when you shared in my life one day, I got pretty frustrated because there is the danger of, because the entrepreneur and this high achiever is in a way bigger and louder or more...
Bigger in their own mind, at least.
Yeah, I mean, they just take up more space in a way than the supportive spouse. The supportive spouse is in the background a lot and doing the things behind the scenes, so they're not out there in front. And so if you're not careful, the dangerous side is it can become a very narcissistic type of life. And I think you've kept that in check, but there have been moments where you could have gone more in that direction. But you had a mentoring group and you asked your mentees, to go home and ask their spouse, what, do you remember?
I can't remember exactly. It was something...
If your spouse could suggest something that you do, or I don't remember what it was, it doesn't really matter. But you came to me and asked me the question. It'd be great if we could remember it because it'd be a good one. I think you wrote a blog post about it. But the bottom line was that I told you that I felt like that all our recreational activities centered around things that you like to do. The problem was that what you like to do, being an introvert and me being an extrovert, your activities were mostly solo. So you loved programming on the computer, you loved running and jogging and reading things that were just for when you felt like you wanted to just relax and do something fun, that meant that you were going to do something alone. Mm-hmm. For me, my preferred way would be to do something with somebody, with you particularly. And so I suggested that what I would love for us to do was to hike together because I love hiking.
And we could talk and share.
And we can talk and share. So we got lots of things that can happen all at once. You can get the exercise you need. And you thought you didn't like hiking. You thought, I'd much rather just run, get it over with, listen to my book while I'm reading, running and whatever, and knock all these things out and be on to the next thing. But you were willing to go hiking with me, and we went to North Carolina, bought hiking poles and shoes and all that, and then we went hiking. And
I loved it. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I to this day, I love hiking.
And it meant, I can't even begin to tell you how much that meant to me, because it was a type of sacrifice for you, mm-hmm. because you then entered my world and allowed me to include you in my world, and it was huge.
Well, and just note to self, I need to do more of that. But let's move on. Okay, so then the gift of commitment, number 4, the gift of commitment. Now, this is obvious, the commitment to the marriage. I'm committed to a long-term marriage. We talked about this last week. There absolutely has never been a thought that divorce is even an option for us. And again, I would say if you're divorced and you're listening to this, we don't mean this as condemnation. It's a different message for you. But
absolutely.
For us, on this side of it, that's just never an option. But I want to take that a little bit further in discussing this gift, because I really think that one of the gifts you have to give to your spouse, to the supportive spouse, if you're an entrepreneur, is the gift of faithfulness, security, having boundaries. So for you, there was never any question about where my heart was in terms of a relationship to you. You knew you had it.
I have to say that, and I know a lot of couples cannot say this, and it breaks my heart, I don't think there was ever one single day in 35 years that I ever feared that you would go off with somebody else.
Yeah.
Never.
I would say that those were conscious choices on my part.
And that's not to say that you weren't in situations where you might be tempted or somebody made a pass at you or whatever. I know that's reality. That's going to happen. But I never feared for this.
Well, and part of it is because you have to make a decision before you ever get in those situations, what you're going to do when it happens. Mm-hmm. And one of the things where I could think distinctly when I was flying into Nashville one time late at night from the West Coast, and there was a girl sitting next to me on the airplane, and she'd had a little bit too much to drink, and she started flirting with me. And so I pulled out my iPhone and started sharing with her my family pictures. and nothing quells the relationship, quite like that. I mean, it just all of a sudden it recontextualizes it for her, and all of a sudden I'm not a target. I'm some guy with a happy family, and I'm not about to give that up for some fling with some woman who's had too much to drink.
I remember early on when you were starting your publishing company that you were on a trip one time, and you were you had just finished dinner, and you were on the elevator going up to your room, and there was a woman on the elevator with you. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And she was apparently very overt in her advances to you, and it scared you.
It scared me to death.
And you did get to your room, locked the door, you were fine, but you called me immediately and just had to tell me what this girl had said and done. But after that, you you made a couple decisions that have stuck with you ever since that day.
Yeah, and it wouldn't really address that situation because there are things that happen that you don't expect. But one of the things that I do is I will not go out to dinner with a woman or have any other meal or even a private meeting with another woman without a third party being present. So even in my office, and by the way, this is controversial. I've taken some heat for this, but I don't care because you're worth more to me. My marriage is worth more to me than whatever criticism I get from other especially women who've occasionally felt like somehow this was discriminatory towards them or acting as if they were predators. And I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it's the better part of wisdom to err on the side of caution. And so when I would meet, and I've had a lot of direct reports, a lot of executives in my business that were female, I got along great with them. In fact, sometimes I feel like I work with women better than I work with men, probably because I have 5 daughters. But I'd always leave the door open, just enough that no shenanigans could go on behind the doors, even if we wanted them to. So I've just been very careful with that. And I think, to be honest, Billy Graham has been a huge inspiration and an example of that. But I do think there has to be a fundamental commitment in your heart about that and a sense of perspective so that you're not throwing away something that's infinitely valuable for the sake of something that's very temporal and passing. And I had this situation a year ago, Gail, and I just remember this one too. I was on a speaking event. Brian was with me. You weren't with me, but Brian, who's my manager, was with me. And we were on the West Coast. And I had just gotten into my hotel room. And all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. You remember this?
Oh, yeah.
And this is unbelievable. And I opened the door, and there was a woman who was in a bathrobe. A
bathrobe or a towel?
It was a towel. Very attractive. I had no idea if she had anything on under the towel or not.
Probably not.
And she said she had locked herself out of her hotel, and could she make a call for my room? I mean, my head exploded. I mean, it really it scared me. It wasn't like, well, yeah, come on in. It was more like, oh my gosh, this is like one of those moments.
Like did you feel like you were being set up or something?
Well, it was occurring to me. I was wondering if I was being set up, and and I felt very vulnerable because there was nobody there to help me. And so I thank God I had the presence of mind to just say, well, I'll tell you what, how about if I call down to the front desk and have somebody come up and help you? And, I'll check on you in a little bit. And I shut the door. And I felt a little bit awkward because, here was a damsel in distress on the one hand, but I didn't want to be stupid on the other hand. And so I just shut the door. I went in, I called downstairs. They sent somebody up. Unfortunately, it took them a while to get there. So I peeked my head out at one point. She was still sitting in the hallway in front of her, and I think it was really legitimate, in front of her hotel room. And I said, so they still haven't come? And she said, no, they haven't. So I said, well, let me call again. So I called again, and I said, get up here now. There's a woman locked out of her door. So they did. But that was a situation where immediately I called you because who knows, in this age of cell phones and photography and, people could put you in a very compromising situation very quickly. And I've never wanted to risk my marriage. It's just too important to me. So let's talk about the final gift, the gift of trust. And
you know what? I'm looking at my note here that there was one more thing I wanted to talk about: commitment.
Okay, let's go back.
Because this is a huge one for me. One of the temptations when you're the supportive spouse is everything becomes about that spouse, and so it's very possible for you to lose your own identity and get completely lost in and everything else, all the demands that you're meeting, and you just get lost. And it really hasn't been until now, all our girls are out of the house, that I've started to ask myself, well, what are my unique gifts? What are my unique contributions? I know that I contribute to the family, to our children, and to you, but what about just what is unique about me, and what my individual gifts and talents are, and how those could be expressed? And so I've been exploring that for the last year or two. But I wish that I would have been more alert to that. And one of the gifts that the high achieving spouse could give to that supportive one is encouraging them to explore things that they like to do and develop in areas that they want to develop in, grow. If they want to pursue some education or some kind of skill or artistic endeavor or whatever it could be a million different kinds of things, but to encourage them in that.
Yeah, and I think in this stage of our life, I have been very encouraging to you and supportive of that, and willing for you to do that and encouraging of you to do that. But I wish I had been more proactive in that earlier on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I know that because as I look at my girls again that are married, 4 of them are married now, I see them doing a much better job of this than I did. And they are, they're each one an incredible human being, having their own voices, their own messages that they're kind of getting out to the world, and their husbands are encouraging them that, and I love that. I love to see that.
I do too.
And maybe that's a sign of the times, but when I was raising children, it was easy just to kind of get lost in the shuffle, and you really do lose your own self.
Yeah, and the danger is you could get resentful. Mm-hmm. The marriage could blow up after the kids are gone.
And depression's a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. You ready to turn to trust?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. So I think for trust, the message to the entrepreneur, the gift that he can give or she can give to his or her family is that, look, I get that it doesn't always all depend on me. And I think it's really easy, and I'll just speak from my own life, really easy to not trust that everything's going to work out. You know, there's one more email to write. There's one more project to finish, one more phone call, and the work can never be done because at its root, I'm acting out of fear and out of a sense of scarcity, not out of a sense of abundance and trust.
That's right. And that's been a struggle for you.
It has been. Because I would say that naturally, I go to fear. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm very strategic in my thinking. That's one of the gifts on the Strength Finders for me. It's like number 2 or 3 on my gift set or my strength set. But how that manifests itself negatively is I'm able to quickly imagine the worst case scenario. And so I'm always trying to avoid the worst case scenario. So there's always one more thing to do just to make sure that we don't go to the worst case scenario.
And another manifestation of that is always feeling like you're living in a temporary situation. And so the good news, though, with that is that you kind of occasionally reboot. It's like you reset and you say, okay, stop the crazy wheel here. Let's just stop and let's go for a walk in the park, or let's go out and get some dinner, or let's do something fun with the kids. I mean, you just stop and you say, okay, I can stop.
Yep.
I can do this. And then it's just important because what it does say is I can relax, I can enjoy my life, and I don't have to act as if it's all dependent upon me.
Right. And I do think I'm getting better at this. I'm a recovering workaholic for sure, but I think I'm growing in my trust, and that's a good thing, and I'm trying to practice it. But for me, it helps me to remember that this is a gift I'm giving to my family.
Yeah.
You know, I'm modeling this, you know, because what I don't want to do is model that you can never stop, you can never rest, you can never enjoy the fruit of your labor. I don't want to be that guy. And so I want to stop and do the things that really are the most meaningful to me, which is engage with people and relate to my family, and those long dinner conversations and those walks through the park or those hikes. Those are the things that I really value at the end of the day, because work is, you know, unrelenting.
And those are the activities that help put the rest of it in perspective.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, 5 gifts, just to review: the gift of honor, the gift of awareness, the gift of inclusion, the gift of commitment, and the gift of trust. And Gail and I both really do believe it's possible to accomplish your dreams, your entrepreneurial dreams, your leadership dreams without blowing up your marriage. But you've got to be proactive. You've got to be intentional. Last week, we talked about what it's like to be married to an entrepreneur. And this week, we talked about if you're the entrepreneur, if you're the leader, the high achiever type, what do you need to do so that you can keep from blowing up your marriage? So next week, and I'm really excited about this, Gail, next week, we're going to devote the entire episode to listener questions about this topic.
And we've already started getting some in, so please call in and give us some more. Give us your hardest question. We'll see what we can do about it.
Yeah, and if we don't know, we'll say so, but we'll tell you the truth.
Because again, it's not like we have it all figured out, but we'll have fun wrestling with them.
Yeah, and if something we've said isn't clear, or frankly, if you've disagreed with something, you can call in too. But go to michaelhyatt.com/podcast question. So now what I want to do is ask you a question, encourage you to participate in the comments at the show notes. And the question is this: what advice do you have for someone who is an entrepreneur or married to an entrepreneur? What advice do you have for someone in that exact same situation? Go to michaelhyatt.com/70, as in episode 70. I'd love to hear from you. I know Gail would too.
I bet we'll learn some new stuff.
I bet we will too. Well, listen, I'll be back in a minute with some final announcements.
Don't close your eyes. Don't close your eyes. Don't close your eyes. Don't close your eyes. This is your life. Are you who you want to be?
All right, welcome back. Just 3 quick announcements. The Platform Conference is going to be this next week in Dallas, Texas, November 3rd through 5th. We still have a few tickets left. If you're a small business owner, if you're a business executive, a social media manager, an author, a speaker, an agent, or a publisher, a mortgage broker, real estate agent, anybody who needs more visibility and more access to leads and clients or prospective clients, the Platform Conference would be a terrific way for you to spend a couple of days and jumpstart the building of your platform. And especially if you're in the Dallas area, it's an easy decision. And you can find out more at platformconference.tv. All the registration information, the list of terrific speakers that we've got. I would love to shake your hand and meet you there if you have the opportunity. Second announcement is if you're thinking about building a platform or if you're serious about taking it to the next level, you need a self-hosted WordPress blog. There's no other blogging platform that compares. WordPress is the platform that professional bloggers and serious bloggers use, and it's not that difficult to set up. And I have a complete tutorial, a screencast that's absolutely free. You can find it at michaelhyatt.com/WordPress setup. And there's also a special discount that's associated with that post to be able to get Bluehost hosting for $3.95 a month, which is $1 off their advertised price. And then finally, the next podcast, as I said earlier, is going to be also on Help, I'm Married to an Entrepreneur, Part 3. But that episode is going to be devoted entirely to questions. Gail and I will answer your questions, and you can leave any question at michaelhyatt.com/podcast question. There'll be a link in the show notes, but it's podcast question if you want to leave us a voicemail. Well, that's it for this episode of This Is Your Life. I hope you've enjoyed it. The show notes can be found at michaelhyatt.com/70 or episode 70. If you've enjoyed this episode, let me encourage you to show the love by going to michaelhyatt.com/love. And that's basically a pre-populated Twitter post. So you can just click on that link and you can share about this podcast with your friends and recommend it to them. You can also rate the podcast on iTunes, and that helps tremendously with my visibility and with new people who are searching for topics like I address on This Is Your Life. But until next time, remember, your life, by the way, your marriage, is a gift. Now go make it count.